Welcome everyone to Hokyoji's Sunday morning Dharma talk. Last time I spoke from Pima Children book. Um, um, let's see, not start with where you are, but well, when things fall apart. Yeah, when things fall apart. And I'm doing the same today on a different chapter. And this chapter is called Not Causing Harm. As time has gone on, uh, maybe I've gotten a little less grandiose what I think I can accomplish in this practice of Zen Buddhism. So right now, I'm just seeing if I can hang out in a place and just not harm anybody. That's where I'm at right now. So he says, not causing harm obviously includes not killing or robbing or lying to people. Um, so would include not harming other life forms as well. It also includes not being aggressive with our actions, speech, mind. Learning not to cause harm to ourselves or others is a basic Buddhist teaching on the healing power of non-aggression. Not harming ourselves or others in the beginning, in the middle, and in the end is the basis of an enlightened society. This is how there could be a sane world. It starts with sane citizens. That means us. So it starts with us. The most fundamental aggression to ourselves, the most fundamental harm we can do to ourselves is to remain ignorant by not having the courage and the respect to look at ourselves honestly and gently. And I think she was very aware or probing when she says gently, because I believe sometimes this practice we do can be presented as a harsh practice. The ground of not causing harm is mindfulness, a sense of clear seeing with respect and compassion for what we see. This is what basic practice shows us. Mindfulness doesn't stop with formal meditation. It helps us relate with all the details of our lives. It helps us see, hear, smell without closing our eyes or ears or our noses. It's a lifetime's journey to relate honestly to the immediacy of our experience and to respect ourselves enough not to judge it. Well, of course, this not judging idea is what was very prevalent in Katagiri Roshi's teachings, not to one of my favorite sayings that I still repeat often is, you cannot measure yourself by your own yardstick. I don't know that I've heard anyone else say that except Katagiri. But it's kind of like, that's quite true. You know, we have our own set of measurements for ourselves, and that's called our own yardstick. So, but you can't measure by your own yardstick. You have to use a real yardstick, not your own, because our own is probably a little out of balance or out of kilter. So we never measure up to our own yardstick. As we become more wholehearted in this journey of gentle honesty, it comes as quite a shock to realize how much we've blinded ourselves to some of the ways in which we cause harm. Our style is so ingrained that we can't hear when people try to tell us, either kindly or rudely, that maybe we're causing some harm by the way we are or the way we relate with others. We've become so used to the way we do things that somehow we think that others are used to it too. So that's an interesting concept. That if I, well, whatever. If I think I'm okay, then I'm thinking other people are thinking I'm okay, but that might not be the case. Then she says the next step is refraining. Refraining. And what came up for me is maybe I would have chose restraining. So I actually looked it up, what the difference between refraining is and restraining. And there's not much really. They actually are synonyms. But let's go with refraining right now. That seems good. Mindfulness is the ground, refraining is the path. Refraining is one of those uptight words that sounds repressive. And she says, surely alive, juicy, interesting people do not practice refraining. Maybe they would sometimes, but not as a lifestyle. In this context, however, refraining is very much the method of becoming a dharmic person. It's the quality of not grabbing for entertainment the minute we feel a slight edge of boredom coming on. It's the practice of not immediately filling up space just because there's a gap. So this is exactly what we do in our practice of meditation. It's when we sit down and do zazen or meditate, we're actually doing the practice of refraining. Just because we're making things so simple that we're going to refrain from entertaining ourselves with well, lots of stuff, of course, uh, movies, music, and everything else. But also refraining or restraining the movements of our mind that are constantly moving around everywhere. So she says the very minute, I'm going to say moment, we feel a slight edge of boredom, but of course that's exactly what Zazen is. I mean, there couldn't be anything more boring in the entire world that we could do. I mean, just think of what could you do that's more boring in the you shout it out if you know it, because I don't know what's more boring. I mean, sitting in the city park looking out the trees, that would be like amusement park compared to Zazen. So not to mention what an actual amusement park is. That's that's just exactly what an amusement park is. It just you go there to be amused. But that's okay. No problem. So, yes. So let's talk just a little bit more about this grabbing for entertainment. The minute we feel a little boredom. Um, so in here, this is what happens in my experience in Zazen. Because it's so boring, things that are not interesting at all become very interesting. when we're sitting zazen, like someone sneezing. It's like that wakes you up and you start thinking about it or whatever. Or someone like hitting the meditation bell to begin meditation, and they either hit it too soft or too loud, according to our yardstick of understanding. And you know, it creates a space there for us to start creating some interesting dialogue for ourselves, maybe even about the person themselves, if if we're who knows. So then she goes on to say, once I was giving an interesting meditation practice that combined mindfulness and refraining. We were told to just notice what our physical movements were when we felt uncomfortable. I began to notice that when I felt uncomfortable, I did things like pull my ear, scratch my nose, or hit head, excuse me, when it didn't itch, or straighten my collar. I made all kinds of little jumpy, jittery movements when I felt like I was losing ground. Our instruction was not trying to change anything, just to notice. Not to change or criticize ourselves, but just to notice what we were doing. Noticing how we try to avoid it is a way to get in touch with our basic groundlessness. Refraining, not habitually acting out impulsively, has something to do with giving up entertainment mentality. Through refraining, we see that there's something between the arising of the craving or the aggression or the loneliness or whatever it might be, and whatever action we might take as a result. There's something there in us that we don't want to experience, and we never do experience because we're so quick to act. If we don't, and I'll add on that if we don't actually settle ourselves into this boredom, the kind of boredom, uh, we won't experience what really is beneath that boredom or that non-doing. We'll just constantly be entertaining ourselves with a kind of reality that we've been ingrained with. And that's just our thinking, basically our thinking process. So refraining is the, oh, okay. Hang on a minute. Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't fit. Okay. It's there bubbling along all the time. We experience it as restlessness and edginess. We experience it as fear. It motivates passion, aggression, ignorance, jealousy, and pride. But we never get down to the essence of it. Now, another book I've been reading was I got an email from Peter Coyote that said he'd read a book that he thought was one of the clearest books on Buddhism that he'd read, and I ordered it. And it's a book by David Brazier. Is that how you say that, Rusha? Do you know? You, you don't know? Okay. Well, and then I had this book, okay, and I started looking at that name and I thought, that sounds familiar. And I looked around and I remembered that Rushin gave a lecture on the dark side of the moon, or at least you referenced it by the same author. And I bought that book too because you really liked that book. So I haven't read that book yet. But anyway, So that's a short thing for I, it's about this passion thing. It motivates passion. Now, one thing Brazier says is we have to have passion. We have to have passion. So it's just a different viewpoint. It's not to say uh, that one's wrong or the other's right. It's just that there's just different viewpoints. And yeah, it does motivate passion kind of out of this nothingness. And we want to do something. And of course, the practice of yeah, I said that the practice of refraining itself is the practice of Zazen. Okay. So she brings up fear here. Refraining is the method for getting to know the nature of this restlessness and fear. Um, I'll go back and read a passage from Brazier about this passion. The problem of suffering has always been the inspiration for human passion in all its range, from the highest achievements of art, spirit, and culture, through to the most sordid degradations of war, squalor, and addiction. Often we turn to religion or spirituality in the hope of magically reassuring answer. The way taught the way taught by the Buddha, however, begins with the recognition of the reality that this wonderful life is also full of innumerable difficulties. We meet with obstacles and opposition. We also carry a lot of suffering and trouble about within ourselves. So anyway, but he really emphasizes this passion as a way to keep moving forward in our practice. And at least when we are, I'll just speak for myself, when I was quite a bit younger, I was very passionate about doing this practice. I would get up every morning at 4:30 and practice Zazen with Katagiri, and also in the evening too. I had a girlfriend at the time, and oh well, way back when, and she said she was really impressed with me just by the fact that I did it, just that I did it, that I get up every morning and go. And that's it, nothing more. She wasn't impressed with anything else I did, but anyway. Okay, so also, and fear too. We we can sense our fear, or at least we can get to know the nature of fear. And I'll briefly go back to a sutra I often reference, the sutra on fear and dread that the Buddha taught. And of course, he only taught, he was saying, I was staying, this I've heard, that's Ananda, on one occasion in the Jeta Grove in Nathapindika. There was a Brahmin named Jasusoni, went to the Fortunate One, exchanged greetings, sat to one side, and asked him, you're the leader, right? And Gautama says, yes. Mhm. And then he says, but Master Gautama apparently had heard some teaching by the Buddha that to go to, seclusion, go to remote places and meditate in seclusion. And he says, Master Gautama, remote jungle thicket resting places in the forest are hard to endure. Seclusion is hard to practice. It's hard to enjoy solitude. One would think that the jungles must rob a bhikkhu of his mind if he has no concentration. And probably the part of this sutra that I like the best is the Buddha responds, yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, you're going to lose your mind if you go into the jungle thicket and practice solitude. And if you don't have concentration, you will lose your mind. And then, of course, then he says, and this is very important, before my enlightenment, okay, this is before I was enlightened, I used to go to, well, I would go to these jungle thickets and I would experience fear and dread. I would experience it. But he decided he was going to endure it, just to endure it. And the way he decided to endure it was whatever posture he was in, he would just remain in that posture and not change his posture when fear and dread came upon him. Probably the other line I really appreciate in this sutra is uh, when he says the line, he would go to these thickets and fear and dread would come upon him. But he asked himself this question, and this is probably why I appreciate this sutra more than a lot of things is he says, why do I dwell always expecting fear and dread to come upon me? It's like, well, this is the Buddha speaking. So I think that's inspirational for me. That this was the Buddha. He was filled with fear and dread. And he also said, why do I always expect fear and dread or something awful to come upon me? What's that about? So he decided that whether it was day or night, if he was walking and fear and dread came upon him, he would just continue to walk. If he was sitting, he would continue to sit. If he was lying down, he would continue to lie down. And what's the other one? Oh, it doesn't matter. Standing. If he stood standing, he would just continue to stand. And if we examine this, when we become agitated or restless or confused or fearful, it's always the case, I believe, we change our posture, right? If we're standing and we get afraid, we'll start walking or something. If we're lying down, we'll sit up, you know. Uh, so his practice was just to go into that fear and dread as deeply as he could without avoiding it. And of course, the rest of the sutra goes on to say, once he did this, he was filled with tireless energy and lots of good stuff. So it works out pretty well in the end. But I think it's a very useful sutra to study. So refraining is a way of making friends with ourselves at the most profound level possible. We can begin to relate with what's underneath all the bubbles and burps and farts, all the stuff that comes up and expresses itself as uptight, controlling, manipulative behavior or whatever. Underneath all that, there's something very soft, tender that we experience. That's very soft and tender. She tells next a story about a young warrior. her teacher told her that she had to do battle with fear. She didn't want to do that. It seemed too aggressive. It was scary. It seemed unfriendly. But the teacher said she had to do it and gave her the instructions for the battle. The day arrived. The student warrior stood on one side, the fear on the other. The warrior was feeling very small, and fear was looking very big and wrathful. They both had their weapons. The young warrior roused herself and went toward fear, prostrated 3 times and asked, "May I have permission to go into battle with you?" Fear said, "Thank you for showing me so much respect that you asked permission." Then the young warrior said, "How can I defeat you?" Fear replied, "My weapons are that I talk fast and that I get in your face really close. Then you get completely unnerved and you do whatever I say. If you don't do what I tell you, I have no power. You can listen to me, you can have respect for me, you can even be convinced by me, but if you don't do what I say, I have no power." In that way, the student warrior learned how to defeat fear. Okay, that's her story. Then she says, this is actually how it works. There has to be some kind of respect for the jitters, some understanding of how our emotions have the power to run us around in circles. That understanding helps us discover how we increase our pain, how we increase our confusion and harm to others. Because of mindfulness, we see things when they arise. Because of our understanding, we see things when they because of mindfulness, we see things when they arise. We don't have to buy into a chain reaction that makes things grow from minute to expansive. The result is that we cease to cause harm. We begin to know ourselves thoroughly and to respect ourselves. Anything can come up, anything can walk into our house. We can find anything sitting on our living room couch, and we don't freak out. I began to actually think about that. I'm not sure about that one. If you walk into your house and you see something, see something unexpected sitting on your couch, you might become a little alarmed. Then he says, well-being of speech is like a lute without strings. Even without strings, the musical instrument proclaims itself. This is an image of our speech being settled. It doesn't mean that we're controlling, uptight, trying hard not to say the wrong thing. It means our speech is straightforward and disciplined. We don't start blurting out words just because no one else is talking or we're nervous. I'd like to go to the Nikayas and say something about right speech that the Buddha said. Says, abandoning false speech, the practitioner abstains from false speech, speaks truth, adheres to the truth, is trustworthy and reliable, not a deceiver of the world. Abandoning malicious speech, abstaining from malicious speech, does not repeat elsewhere what has been heard here in order to divide those people from these people. Nor does the practitioner repeat to these people what is heard elsewhere in order to divide these people from those. Thus, the practitioner is one who reunites those who are divided, a promoter of friendships, who enjoys concord, rejoices in concord, delights, a speaker of words that promotes concord, abandoning harsh speech, abstaining from harsh speech, speaks such words that are gentle, pleasing to the ear, and lovable, as to go to the heart, are courteous, desired by many, and agreeable to many, abandoning gossip, and speaking on Dharma at the right time. He knows such words are worth recording, reasonable, moderate, and beneficial. So this is, while we may not bodily harm other people, by hitting them or whatever, it's quite easy to hurt people by our speech and our words. Her concluding paragraph is, at the root of all the harm we cause is ignorance. Through meditation, that is what we can begin to undo. If we see that we have no mindfulness, that we rarely refrain, that we have little well-being, that is not if we see that we have no mindfulness and that we rarely refrain, that we have little well-being, that is not confusion. It is the beginning of awakening or clarity. So that's what we can see when we sit down and sit zazen. Just really how confused we are and how little concentration we have. But that's the beginning of clarity, to actually see that. As the moments of our lives go by, our ability to be deaf, dumb, and blind doesn't work so well anymore. Rather than making us more uptight, interestingly enough, this process liberates us. This is the liberation that naturally arises when we are completely here without anxiety about imperfection. That's my talk for today. I know it was a lot of reading, but now it's time to discuss. So I hope something arises with people with these passages that I spoke about. So does anyone have anything they'd like to bring forward? Rushin.
You never gave us the title of the book that Peter Coyote recommended.
Yeah. Called The Feeling Buddha.
So did he also write the book on Genjo Koan, The Dark Side of the Mirror?
Dark Side of the Moon. Dark Side of the Moon. I thought you really liked that book. Okay, maybe not. Well, anyway, you talked about it once, and you said something, I don't remember what it was, but you said something quite insightful that you got from that book. So it just kind of it's just this little tiny connection that you get every now and then that comes from different places. So I thought you would remember.
So I was up north all last week hiking, and I was with a good friend from MZMC days, and he takes a lot longer to get going in the morning
Oh,
than I do. So if it was up to me, I would be out on a trail at like 8:30, but we rarely got out before like 10:30. So I'm sitting there waiting, and I'm dealing with this restlessness, this drive that I want to get out and going. And it's like I realized that this drive, this restlessness really served me well when I had a job, when I had a career, when, to get up and going and tackle things. But now it's like I just had to deal with it. And I that was a big part of the vacation was dealing with this restlessness. And then when we would get out, he walks a little faster than I do because I'm a little more overweight than he is. And I carry a heavier pack because why do I carry a heavier pack? Because I have fear and dread. So I have emergency blankets, I have emergency ponchos, I've got waterproof matches, I've got more water than I could possibly need, but I feel I need those things because who knows what can happen out there, right? But eventually we walk far enough that we're tired, and then the drive goes away, and then you kind of mellow out. And then sometimes we pause for a little break, and then when there's less agenda, when we finally pause and we look around, we see all these things we don't see when we're busy walking. It's pretty amazing. And then we get up and have a goal every day to get to somewhere. Sometimes we make it, sometimes we don't. But one of the interesting things is as we're getting older, we're actually more ambitious because we're fighting old age.
oh,
We want to go further. We want to do more. We want to prove that we're not old and failing. So we did longer hikes than we normally do. My friend would normally get tired and say, "Let's go, turn back." Sometimes we do this thing was like, okay, another 5 minutes, another 10 minutes, and then we'll go. But but the whole thing about this restlessness is like it's really, really deep. It's just so it has many consequences. I will say that. So this talk was right on top of that. So thank you very much.
yeah. Thank you. When you mentioned your packing, I've gone on numerous trips in my life, and this packing for the trip has really become an obsession for me. Uh, because I get into places where I don't know how to do anything. Well, like in the wilderness, you don't have, but anyway, my packing list is no less than um, 5 pages long, and it's got it's got, I mean, like 4 columns going down. It's a spreadsheet, you know, and I mean, it's everything. It's toothpicks. It's it's a nasal swab. I have a few of everything, and it takes me days and days and days to pack. You know, but anyway, it's also because I've had so many misadventures, and and so anyway, yeah, it's so, and it's kind of connected to passion, I think. I have a passion that things are gonna go okay, make this trip okay, and so I spend time working to prepare. But anyway, it reminded me of your pack on your back with so much stuff.
I'm going to call on myself. Uh, I was busy kind of making sure that I was doing all the things I needed to do to make sure the recording of this came out and that the participation could happen. And then I settled down, and just as you were talking about twitching and boredom, I noticed that I no sooner noticed it, stopped it, and then I was doing it again. And I noticed you were doing the same thing. And so it kind of helps cement the value of noticing that, because I couldn't really just decide to stop it. And at least by appearance, it looked like you couldn't either. So thank you for giving me a live experience in tune. It really takes quite a bit of time to stop twitching, and kind of amazing. I did want to say that I tried to look up the book, which fortunately I don't have to do now because you showed it to us. But when I looked up book Dark Side of the Moon, I kept getting only things about Pink Floyd and an album that
That's good. I remember that.
so
Completely forgotten about that.
just an FYI.
Okay.
It sounds like it's a legend of an album, so maybe it's good
Yeah, that's good.
that that happened.
Oh, no, no, it's not the moon. It's the mirror. Dark side of the mirror, not the moon. Okay. That's in Dogen though, he says the dark side of the moon in the Genjo Koan. This is a commentary on the Genjo Koan, Dogen's Genjo Koan. So
Yeah, that book I did read. And
oh, okay. Okay. Sorry
and
about
and Ted O'Toole gave a class on that that was really good.
oh, okay.
Um, so Kikon and I both took that class at the same time. We were the only outside MZMC people who took
Oh,
that.
okay.
It's really good commentary on Genjo Koan.
Okay. Well, I'm going to give people 30 more seconds to ask a question or comment.
When your talk goes online, we can all look at ourselves and witness our own twitching.
Okay, well, I guess we'll um,
I can't hear you very well, but I'm going to talk over you anyway. So, some things to know about what's coming up. You know that we are uh, moving through the steps of the process, of course, of um, creating the new Zendo. I think, from what my own experience is, it would be a good idea to let people know that it's a good time to come down and see Hokyoji. And I say that partly because we've got a care of the a land care event coming up in October on the 24th. I think that's still accurate. That's what we have online. We also have starting on the 10th of October, which I believe is a Monday, next Monday, a group that's being led by a group of people. I think GD organized this, but it's going to be a discussion group. So I highly recommend those, partly because you meet people you don't know and get to know them. In November, Patrice Kolsch, who talked last week actually, and is very involved with Common Ground, is going to be leading a retreat called Practicing the Way Retreat. And so it's going to be a taste of Vipassana and Zen in a retreat form. And then we've got Mark Anderson and Melissa Link, who are married and have been here a couple of times, who do a really unique kind of sesshin, I'll call it. They don't call it that. Let's see, they call it enacting inherent capacity for peace, playfulness, relationality, responsiveness, personhood. And it involves partly meditation and partly movement and partly Mark Anderson playing percussion instruments, which is just a very interesting addition to a sesshin. It's a good one if you don't like sesshin. All right. So, and then of course we have Rohatsu in the first week of December. So that's what's coming up. You all know that we value very much your contributions, and we need them more than ever, partly because we're paying staff who are doing an absolutely wonderful job of taking care of Hokyoji. So let's end with our 4 vows. I didn't bring any instruments, so I'm playing a partially full drinking container for the bell. So here we go. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it.